Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting us and to talk about what I consider probably the most significant issue facing education today. Assembly Republicans have prided ourselves on addressing issues that face our state. Today we're going to talk about what I see as the most significant challenge facing K-12 education, and that's a equitable, sustainable, and effective funding alternative, all while working to continue to reduce property taxes. So there's been conversation about this plan in the news. Let's first talk about some of the basics. Compared to today, under this plan, every school district in the state is guaranteed to get more state aid. We propose over $600 million in new money for schools. Yet at the same time, we target aid to frugal, low-spending school districts. Levy limits, while having been effective, have left frugal school districts locked into these low-spending limits that were first established in 1993 and have not kept pace with the cost of education inflation. Think about where we've come from 1993 to today. Think about the things that are different in our world today than they were in 1993, especially from a cost driver standpoint. I can think of probably one of the most significant, and that's the cost of health care. A lot has changed. So levy limits range from here at Merrill at 9209, is my understanding, on the low end, and actually they go even lower in our state, a few dollars lower, to over $15,300 at Nicolay Union High School in the Milwaukee area. Yet both of these schools and the hundreds like Merrill throughout the state both have the same charge to educate our children and to provide them an opportunity to succeed in our state and in our country. Just to address some of the thoughts that might be out there that this is simply a rural issue, 60% of the students in the state of Wisconsin are educated in districts that spend below the state average. Those are these low spending districts. A majority of our kids are in these schools. Over 200 schools in our state levy below 9,800, and the statewide average is 10,000. So this plan proposes more money in the classroom than the governor's budget. It actually increases overall spendable dollars in the classroom by $12 million. Yet it also, by directing the dollars more directly where they are truly needed, actually reduces our overall GPR spend. So it's a win-win. So one of the conversations has been that we've been hearing a lot is property taxes. And I come from Marinette. I have Michigan right across the border from me, so I don't want to diminish how important affordable property taxes are. Michigan has always been traditionally much lower than Wisconsin, so this is something that's important to me. But under this plan, it will result in a net levy on a median value home in our state at $2,842. That's $10 below where they are today, and a reduction of $121 since 2010. So while delivering the dollars where they're most needed, we still can provide property tax relief in our state. This plan also limits the expensive and I would say unsustainable path of buying down school referendum. 55% of the referendums that have been taking place in our state are coming from these low revenue districts. And if you are one that perhaps maybe has a successful referendum and another one does not, I would just say that what's happening is the community that may not have that referendum based on the policies that we've had in place on buying down the property taxes is actually paying for a portion of that levy increase in the community that did pass that referendum as well. So this is a directive to reduce that demand on referendum. Some have said that this plan actually picks winners and losers. I would only accept that argument if you would also agree that for the last 24 years since these levy caps were put in place, that these low revenue districts have been the losers. So this plan at a time when $1 billion of new revenue is available in our state, at a time when we're committing over $600 million in new revenue for education, this is the time to address this inequity that's been in existence since 1993. There is no better time than today. To wrap up, once again, this perspective that this only touches certain districts in the state. This touches rural, this touches urban, this touches suburban. It touches every corner of the state. And more importantly, I just want to leave you with this. This is not about dollars and cents. This is about a sustainable, equitable, and I would say equal opportunity to educate children throughout our state. And that should be everyone's #1 goal. So to discuss some of the rural initiatives that I know she's been championing for the last several years, I want to introduce your state representative in this area, Representative Felskowski, who is also a member of our Joint Finance Committee. Mary?
Thanks, John, and thank you to everyone that came down for this. As John said, a few years ago when I was first elected to the Assembly, myself and Representative Rob Swearingen from the 34th Assembly District approached Governor Walker and then our Speaker, and we asked if we could do a rural schools task force. And Governor Walker was absolutely, and Speaker Voss had us run with it, and we went all across the state listening to a lot of our rural districts to find out what challenges were uniquely theirs. And along with maybe a lack of the urban services for wraparound services, I think the #1 thing that we heard from most of the school districts was the low revenue cap and the inequity in funding. So this was a very unique time and ability for us to address those issues. And to just put it into perspective a little bit, Tomahawk levies at $9,212. Antigo is at $9,274. Merrill is at $9,209. Your neighbors to the south, with 20 minutes away, are at $10,228 and $10,338. And yet, we as a state are asking you to deliver the same services, not just educational services, but mental health services, transportation services. We are asking you to compete on a report card statewide with other districts. What would it mean to Merrill to have that $1,000 a student more? $2 million a year, approximately? Think of what could be done for children with that type of opportunity. One of the things that came very much apparent to us was, I'll use Elko, who is also in the district. Elko right now is a small K-12 school. They offer 5 math classes to their high school students. Appleton offers 47. How do we expect the children in Elko to compete with children in Appleton at a secondary level or a work level who've never seen a computer science class or who haven't had AP math classes? Or maybe in Appleton, because they have accessibility to broadband and an APV lab, they're taking Chinese or French or Russian. Those are the types of things that are not equitable, and they need to be. Elko doesn't, I'm not saying Elko doesn't do an amazing job, because they do with the resources that are there, but it's not an equal education. We all know that education is the greatest equalizer that we have, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but in the United States as a whole. And as we move forward, no matter what your beginnings are, whether they're humble beginnings, maybe you were born and raised into a situation of poverty, if we can get you that equal education opportunity, the sky is the limit. We know then that you can do whatever it is you would like to do with your life. Another part of the Rural Schools Initiative that we worked with, and I sat on the Rural Schools Task Force that was chaired by Representative Swearingen, and I also sat on the Urban Schools Task Force. And after the Urban Schools Task Force came out, I was contacted by Dr. Driver out of MPS, Milwaukee Public School System. And we found the common ground between urban and rural. And a lot of what we're going to be doing in this budget around retaining teachers, incentivizing teachers, finding local people for those wraparound services came from that collaboration between the urban and rural. In addition to that, in our last session, we did the statutory authority to allow and incentivize whole grade sharing. Whole grade sharing being District A, District B, both keep their elementary schools. Maybe District A takes the middle school, District B takes the high school. That allows for more dollars in the classroom, less dollars in bricks and mortar. The problem that we heard from Department of Public Instruction was that the way that we funded that was not good. We ran it through the funding formula, so there was a lot of uncertainty in the dollars that would come through. We've now changed that under this budget. We're going to do it in a separate categorical so that school districts, as they move forward with that and shared services, they would have the ability of certainty in their dollars. Very excited that this is the time that we have the dollars available to help the low spending school districts. As Representative Nygren stated, 60% of the children in the state of Wisconsin are in low spending districts. Oak Creek, Franklin, on the south side of Milwaukee, they are limited to 94.74, where their partners on the north side of Milwaukee in the suburbs are levying at an average of 11,000 and up. How do they compete? How do they offer the same services, the breadth of classes, the wraparound services, and the same quality of teachers? So this is the time to address it, and I'm hoping that through good negotiations and a lot of positive people in Madison that we can do that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Representative Swearingen for a few words.
Well, thanks, Ray. I actually didn't plan to come here to speak today, but after seeing the plan that was introduced in the Assembly yesterday, I got pretty excited to come to this press conference and actually congratulate and thank both Mary Felskowski and John Nygren for the hard work they did on this plan. So, as Mary indicated, I was the chairman of the Rural Schools Task Force put out by Speaker Robin Vos about 2 sessions ago. And one of the things we realized was the inequities in the school funding formula, which was no big secret and no big surprise probably to anybody, especially the administrators here in the room. So we realized that in order to get money back into these rural schools, it has to come outside of what is the common school funding formula. And that's what this does. This is real money. One of my biggest frustrations since I've been elected to the State Assembly is what's happening in Rhinelander. Rhinelander, I think we can all agree, is a rural school district. However, with an enrollment of 2,500, it kind of puts them up into a little higher category, and you can compare them with other bigger districts in the state of Wisconsin. This takes care of the fact that Rhinelander is not only rural, but actually needs the help. They've been pinching pennies. They've been doing a great job for almost 20 years since they got frozen. This takes another look at that. Rhinelander is a big winner under this proposal with a potential of $1.6 million for that high school, or for that school district. That is huge. That is real money. They need it. Rather than going back and forth to referendum every other year, which of course referendums are very divisive within a community. And these are the things that we have discovered over the last couple of years with the Rural Schools Task Force. Some other big numbers here that everybody should be aware of. Little town of Crandon, $405,000. Very small Florence County, less than 6,000 people in the entire county. For their school district, we're going to up them $280,000. That's huge for such a small community like Florence. Minocqua, $265,000. Northland Pines up in Eagle River, $661 additional $1,000. That's big money for Northland Pines Eagles, and they would appreciate that. So our frustration as we stand here today, making sure that we want to make sure the public knows that the Assembly Republicans are working on a solution to the education problem. What we've been doing the last 4, 5, 6 years is not all just talk. We're actually coming to the table with a proposal. So I would encourage my colleagues in the Capitol and the Senate, and of course the Governor, to take a second and a third look at this proposal, because this works. This works for Wisconsin education. And that's what we're here for our kids, because they're our future, and we want them to stay here in Wisconsin, especially if you're from the Northwoods, and raise a family here, and all this will help with economic development and creating family-sustaining jobs.